guys, welcome to another episode of the Sensible Hippie Podcast, and I'm your host, the Sensible Hippie. I'm thrilled to have an exclusive interview today with Josh, the creator behind the popular YouTube channel Fog of War. Known for his dynamic and unorthodox approach to exploring history and mysteries, Josh makes a grand return after a notable hiatus. In today's episode, Josh opens up about his personal journey, starting with the intriguing story of his great-grandmother, a foundling from Bermuda. He shares the compelling narrative of his mother's cult connection and his own potential involvement in a shadowy program, memories of which are now only surfacing in adulthood. Through his story, Josh delivers a powerful message about overcoming dark pasts and finding solace and strength in faith. Join us as Josh and I go down several rabbit holes and discover how one can emerge from the depths of uncertainty to find faith and hope.
My background is I was born in Massachusetts. My father was a military policeman. My mother, she grew up. My mother was a daughter. My grandmother was also a witch. She was into witchcraft. I do not know the depths that my grandmother was into, but I do know what some of the stuff that my mom was into. My mom, just to get this and put it right out there, right? So my mom was invited to be a part of initially she was told it was a transcendental meditation group, and this was back in, I believe it would have been the late 60s, somewhere around there, mid to late 60s. She got involved with this transcendental meditation group. Shortly thereafter, it was made known to her that there was an inner core, and they wanted her to be a part of this. It's a much more ancient sort of a inner core of I guess practitioners or whatever. So she said a lot of them were very wealthy. They're very like the beautiful people, you know what I mean? And lawyers. She said there was a chief of police. There was people in the medical profession, and so she kind of wholeheartedly. She was young, and my dad was away on his military duties and all that. So my mom was kind of a young lady at home alone, being kind of I don't know, I guess seduced into this club sort of thing, all these socialites and wealthy people. And so she got into it, and it became, it was very much witchcraft, right? And so she began to learn some of the hierarchy and some of what was going on. Now, the group that she was involved with answered to what's called the Druidic Council. And in that, she kind of came into her own. She had a specific skill, and she was very good at astral projection, right? So she could literally just sit there, and within minutes she had the skill where she'd just pop out of her body. And so I think they used her for a lot of that. I have we have 3 siblings that were never we're told they were stillborns, but they were not, right? The last of those, there was 2, and I don't have a lot of information about them. I was told about them. I was 7 years old. My mom was telling me at that point why we did not celebrate Halloween, because I just wanted to go out. All my friends are going out. Like, I loved, masks and all that kind of stuff. And she was like, "Listen, this is why we don't do it." And with that, I was 7 years old when she kind of dropped this bomb on me. So a lot of the sacrificial stuff, right? She told me, but it was in a way, it was almost like a time released egg. You know what I mean? It was almost like I didn't understand until I was much, much later, And so the third child before there's my older sister, my older brother, and myself, and there was 3 before us. The first two, as far as I know, they were, they never lived on the planet for more than a very short time. The third was my older sister, and her name was Wendy. Now, my mother told me that Wendy lived for about 9 months and then died, and she wouldn't really specify what, how. She's like, it was a sickness, and she died. And that was kind of like glanced over in the Halloween story, right? But I remember word for word what she was telling me, because this was like mind blowing, right? The things that she kind of got into. I found out later that, Wendy, actually, my father, they divorced when I circled back on this to talk to my father, and I had to wait because she told me this at Halloween, and I didn't see my dad until summer, summer break. So as a little kid, 7-year-old, that's a long time. I waited all the way. I got there in summer, and I began to ask him like what my mom said. And they're divorced. They've been divorced for years, and like so, my dad kind of. Part of me was like expecting my dad to be like, "Your mom's crazy. That's crazy," but he didn't. Right? Like some of the stories he was like corroborating. It wasn't until actually probably 5 or 6 years ago that I circled back with my dad. I haven't had a lot of communication with my dad throughout my adult life. We kind of lost touch, and a lot of that's due to some of the things that I was doing, and we can go into that, but anyway, but he knew that Wendy. He said that he signed the birth certificate and the death certificate in the same day. Right.
So she didn't live 9 months?
No, she did, but he had no idea about it. Right. She signed the birth and death certificate the same day, and Wendy lived for 9 months. Right, and was
That was before you. She was before you.
That was before my older sister, my older brother, and then myself.
You think she was given to the cult?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, she was. All three of them were.
Sacrificed, do you think?
100%. Yeah, and I think that Wendy was involved with a ritual, that a specific ritual. I think that she had something to do with. I actually think it had something to do with an Easter, an Ishtar, Isis. It's like a fertility sort of thing, and I'm pretty certain that's what happened there. I don't know for a fact, but I do know these are facts. This is what happened. My mom died. She died in 2014, and we didn't really. We would talk about some of this stuff, but we never got into it again. Like from that time when she gave me this pulse of information when I was 7, she never went into it like that ever again. And little bits here and there, right? Little bits here and there, but when I would ask about it, she would shut me down, quickly. And I understand now, right? Like I was a kid, you know what I mean? Like it's just like, dude, you're asking stuff you don't want to know the answer to, type of thing. And so I just remember, my mom always telling me, she's like, listen, like physical pain is nothing. You can live with physical pain. She's like, emotional and mental trauma is the worst pain in the world, and that always stuck with me, because when she said it, I could feel the weight of it, So my mom found God. A lot of her friends were dying. She became completely just terrified of what she was involved with. She had like a moment with Jesus, like literally, she's like, it changed my life. And so she began to search out, different churches, and she ended up falling in with a Doomsday sort of cult with a pastor that maybe in the beginning started off like trying to, search for God, but in the end he was a cult leader, He was
one cult to another cult.
Narcissist, yes, exactly, 100%. And so she was being handled, right? And so the things that would allow a woman getting out of a dark, evil coven to get into a born again Christian sort of a situation, just think about the handling that had to have gone on in her life to get her into that scenario, right? So it's these subtleties that, maybe throughout this interview people might be able to pick up on, but you can be a very sharp person and you can still be being handled in your every day-to-day life and not even know it, And so that's one of the biggest things that, I've been told along the way is like, listen, dude, like there's no such things as coincidences, you know what I mean? And so just by way of keeping your eyes open and, a lot of people can take the step to understanding, I guess, what's behind the veil, maybe. I always equate this kind of stuff to like, I remember when I was a kid, we had this stone wall and there's in the back in the woods, and there's a stone wall and like, I just remember like one day we were like tearing apart this stone wall. It was old. And I remember like there's like two of us and we rolled over this big rock and we saw the biggest freaking beetles and bugs. We were like, what the heck? Like nothing I'd ever seen before, And it's kind of like that. It's kind of like once you start looking into places like maybe you haven't looked at before, sometimes you see stuff, you know what I mean? That's like been there the whole time, that's hidden and it's big and it's huge and it's shocking, you know what I mean? And then you see it and it runs away and it's like, what the hell, you know what I mean? And it takes a minute to just process, but that's kind of almost like what it is, especially like waking up out of this stuff. And so I think that anyone that has an inkling to learn truth and all that, they're probably in the process of being woken up, right? So, and then it's back to what do you listen to? What's true? What's not true? You know what I mean? Because you're literally going to get whatever you believe parroted back into your face by some AI algorithm or whatever, So, perilous times, know God. You know what I mean? Like, that's my biggest thing is like, know God, know what He has already done for you, know His voice, know like those feelings, like, and I equate a lot of that stuff to like the feelings I got when I'm like home with my family or like my kids or like when I remember the love that I had, for my siblings or my mom or like, that I always try to bring it back to when I was a child when my emotions weren't so just screwed up, you know what I mean? And I think that's one of the reasons why God says, to approach the kingdom of heaven as a child, because in this day and age, we're just so jaded. You know what I mean? We're just so damaged. You know what I mean? And I hate to say it, but it's true. My mom coming out of these very dark backgrounds and then also getting kind of handled into a Doomsday cult, coming up in that, even from like teachers, and I think that what I would like to impress upon people listening maybe is that I'm wondering how many people, like, when they went through school were separated out from the rest of the class. Like, I know already from feedback that I've gotten from others that there was kind of like a duality of groups. Like one group, they were told that they had, maybe it was dyslexia or some sort of a learning impotence. And then or something else, and then maybe the other group was told that they were well advanced of the others and on this other trajectory. So when I was in second grade, I was approached by these Proctors, and it just happened one day. We were in class, the teacher came and said, there's some people here to meet with you. There was two other guys in my class, there's three of us, and everyone went out for recess and they wanted to play, and we're like, what the hell? Like, you know what I mean? I want to go play in the playground. But these people came in and they basically told us that, and I was so young, I don't know if we had just taken standardized tests. I don't know. Like, I don't remember anything like leading up to this. I remember the meeting. They brought us in. They said we were advanced. They said that they needed our permission to, if we wanted to be involved, and it was an advanced course. It was for higher learning. They said that, don't worry, we're not going to separate you from your friends. You'll remain in the same class. We're not here to take you away from anybody or anything like that. But we'd like to put you in this program, you know. And I was like, cool, they're like, you're gonna have your own. We're gonna come in at certain points. We're gonna take you aside. Then you'll be back with your class. You know, you're gonna have your own booklets. I remember one of the kids asking, what about the stuff we're missing in class? They're like, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Your teachers, the school, they're all aware. You're fine. You're not gonna get behind, and all this other stuff. And so, I remember that meeting explicitly. They gave me a book to bring home. It was like a paperback sort of book. I don't remember anything that was in it. There were some things that my parents signed, and then after that, I just remember they would come into the classroom and they would call us out. And I remember this happened like a bunch of times. Like I remember like me, the other, I don't want to say the other kids' names, but they all, each one of the kids that I was in this class with, one of them has ties to the White House. The other guy has ties to Wall Street. He was like a millionaire before we were even 24. And I can't find them now, right? Because once I started, they're not on social media. I've checked in with, we have some people that keep, year by year, they keep throwing these high school reunions, and they're like, we don't know where they are, you know? So it's kind of strange. So I remember them coming and getting us out of the class. The teacher would call our names, and the proctor would be waiting at the door. And I remember like multiple times, everyone would be like, where are they going? Where are they? Why do they get to leave? You know what I mean? I just remember walking out thinking like, you know, I was just like, I'm a kid. I'm like, hi, you guys, whatever. But as I started really thinking about this, and it really took me bouncing this off someone else, because he was in another class, but he was told that he was dyslexic. But they were doing things with video projectors, metronomes, flashing lights, very strange. He remembers some of the classes, right? But even he's like, I don't remember a lot of it. I don't remember anything. I remember walking out of those classes. I remember the comments that everyone made. But I literally, it's like everything goes black, right? And it happened to my older brother. My older brother was in the same specialized course, and he only remembers it for 1 year. I think he was in third grade when they approached him. So he was actually approached before I was, a couple years before, and he also has no memory of any of it. So digging more into that, I'm realizing that there's a lot of people that have been through that, right? So if you're a person that was taken off your school and taken to maybe another room in the school, maybe another building near the school, maybe a medical center near the school by proctors or by para-teachers, you most likely were involved in one of these programs. And then start going from there. Start looking for smoking guns. Do you remember what happened? You know what I mean? Like, and so my thing is that if you were a part of these programs, there's something deeper about you that they're looking into. So as far as I go, like a lot of this, I believe started with. I believe that it probably started with my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother was found, she was born in the late 1800s. She was found in Bermuda at 5 years old. She was clamming. She was a 5-year-old alone in Bermuda. She was found by a family in Connecticut. And back in those days, they were known as foundlings. There were major orphanages established everywhere. They're like, so we had all these orphans. There's a lot of strange things with history, and I don't want to make any claims. I don't really know, but I know there's a lot of weird stuff that happened in the 1800s toward the turn of the century there. But my great-grandmother was one of these foundlings, right? And I believe that it started there, right?
On your mom's side or your dad's side?
My mom's side. Yep. And I think it went down to her daughter, to then my grandmother, right to my mother, and down to me. So, it's funny that after looking into all this stuff, there was a document that was It was declassified from the CIA. It's called Gateway, the Gateway process. And so I started reading that. This was only a few years ago, but I found it very interesting that within that document there is references to transcendental meditation. The Gateway process is basically it's a multi-million-dollar study into the reality of basically astral travel. Like projecting yourself out of your body. Precursor or laid in the same sort of a thing as like, remote viewing and all these other things. It all kind of has this thing. So I think that, a lot of people don't even realize that back in, I don't know when they implemented it, but it goes back like all the way. I don't know if it's the 40s, but 50s. Before you even got married, you had to get a blood test, right?
Yes.
And you could not get married legally without blood tests, right? So they have been systematically, everything is data. They have been tracking bloodlines all the way through, and it doesn't stop. And then how these bloodlines intersect with other bloodlines, and all this is data. It's compiled. It doesn't go anywhere. They're using it. You know what I mean? Like a lot of stuff that we just see that like, oh, who cares? This is a worthless piece of information. It's actually, it means something, right? So they've been following this like to a T for more than people like to admit. They're telling people that we just wanted to make sure your blood was compatible, so you didn't have a retard. You know what I mean? Like that's not the case. It's deeper than that. It goes way deeper than that, and it started. So a lot of these very powerful families, they literally have, and it's like a seal of honor, but they literally are able to trace their lineages back, and so it's very important to them, right? And so I believe that was why that I've been the main reasons that I've been kind of handled along this. This certain vein. So as I grew up, we grew up in this weird cult thing. I wanted nothing to do with it, and I kind of fell in with some wrong, like some kind of like criminal elements, I guess we could say. And in that, I also was involved with the military. I signed up for the military. I swore in for the United States Navy. And I don't really know how much I should. I don't want to really get into a bunch of that. Actually, I'm gonna just leave that alone. But it does play a part in some of this. And geez, how do I say this? So I as a kid, it's a big world. The things that I was doing as far as running drugs, running weapons, all this stuff around, you're not just a high school kid and all of a sudden in the middle of a game like this, right? So for me, I'm looking at it as like, oh, I know this guy and I know this guy and we're doing this, and everything seems to have an organic sort of like a segue. But being older and looking back at it, I'm like, no, you know what I mean? Like this, I was handled, you know what I mean? So these are realities. Like it took a long time, you know what I mean, to see this. And but once again, I don't want to get into just a bunch of that shit, man. It's just like, there's no reason for it. I don't want to poke the bear. There's no reason to poke the bear like that. You know what I mean? Like, but let's just say like I was involved with a lot of operations that had to do with like moving a lot of drugs, guns around, terrible shit. And it was almost sanctioned in a way. And I don't want to even say like, anything. I really don't want to give like geographical locations or like what it was, but I will say it was like a lot of cocaine, a lot of marijuana, and then really on I was able to do any side deals that I could do, and so like I was selling everything, like LSD, pounds of mushrooms, like whatever. Aside from the guns, aside from all that, all the connections that I had in like different areas, different cities, were basically given to me, and I'm like, oh, I got the hookup from him, and like, you know what I mean. But once again, I'm kind of being handled. It wasn't until later in life where I met the individual that I was telling you about, that I don't really want to. Yeah, it's gonna sound lame. Like people listen to that saying, like, what the hell is this dude talking about? But once I was introduced to this guy, he began to like just drop stuff, and I'd known him for years, and he had been in Afghanistan. He had done hearts and minds stuff in Afghanistan, in Palestine. He has ties with Hezbollah, but
is he military?
He is. I guess you could say he's a militarist, right? But his whole life is similar to mine in that even at a young age he was being put through a lot of these processes, and so but he's not even he enjoys diplomatic immunity, so yeah, I guess we'll just leave that. But so he after knowing him for a few years and stuff, he kind of began to come out to me a little bit, and some of the stuff he told me was like, I'm like, bro, that's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, nah. And then once you start seeing the reality of some of the stuff, it's terrifying, you know? And so he told me a few things, and I needed to, and some other people were involved. So I said, I'm going to call this guy, see what. So it's just like what happened with my dad and my mom, you know, when I waited and I went and I circled back, and you find out it's true. You know what I mean? So when I find out and I talk to these guys, and then all of a sudden you find out it's true, it's like chicken skin. You're just, you know what I mean? It psychologically throws you for a loop. You know what I mean? And because it's one thing to like believe something, you know, like a lot of people go online and they're like, oh, you know, I hear about these dark cults and like what they do, and you know, and you hear about it, right? And it's just out there on the periphery, but when you experience it and it's real, right, it changes everything, right? It the weight of it, and a lot of people think that, oh yeah, I can handle it, I can do it, I want to know it all, and it's like, dude, like some of this stuff you wish you never knew, you wish you'd never seen that. There's things in my head that I wish I never saw, you know what I mean? Like, and I can still hear like but it's like, and you can't get rid of it, you know what I mean? It changes, like it changed the way you fucking eat your breakfast in the morning, you know what I mean? Like it changed everything in your whole life. And so with that, you know, some of the stuff that he disclosed to me, and then the other gentleman that I circled back with, I was just mind blown, right? So I called a childhood friend, and I'm like, bro, listen to this, right? Like I need someone to talk. And then I find out that my childhood friend also, right, he was running drugs and guns with me the whole time. He's one of the, in reality, all the people that we ran with are gone, right? They're like all gone. They're like either they've died of addictions, they've died of violence, or some of them are still locked up, you know what I mean, in prison. So he is like kind of like the staple. And so when I talked to him, he said, he was like, dude, I'm getting freaking, he said, I know. And he said, you're surrounded by him. And I was like, what do you mean? He said the skateboarder and the gypsy, and he named the two people that I was talking to, right? And so then I'm like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like I just literally, it felt like the whole bottom was like falling out. Like I literally was like, so I began to question everything. I'm like, dude, like I couldn't even like, can I trust my wife? You know what I mean? Is like my wife because my wife's family, they're involved in all the shit. They're like, her uncle is with the NGA and other ones with Boeing. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? You know what I mean? Like, So I literally had to come to the point where I'm like, dude, can I even trust my wife? Like my wife's family? Like what? It was really a hard thing to, I was reeling, you know what I mean? Like, I couldn't talk to her. I couldn't talk to anyone. And I guess that's not a big thing for me because I've become used to hiding everything so well. And like, I don't talk to anybody. It's all bottled up. You know what I mean? Like, literally, like I see people breaking down and because of things and I'm like, oh my God, bro, like I can't even imagine the pressure that's inside of me. You know what I mean? Because it's so deep. It's so in there. Like I can't even, you know what I mean? When these things start getting accessed, it's like, it's terrifying. So once this stuff started becoming revealed to me by friends that did not even know each other, that are separated by decades and thousands of miles, right? That was one of those moments where it's like you can kind of know something, but when it's real, it changes everything, you know? So I think these guys knew that I was having a hard time with this, you know, and I think, you know, and I just thank God that because you know, a lot of this stuff and it is an awakening. It's an awakening, and I appreciate the fact that maybe it was kind of fed to me in bite-sized spoonfuls, you know what I mean? Because literally, like, there was a point when I was like losing it, and so, you know, from there, my buddy, we have, going back to the military, we have some similar things that happened to us both. He's taken me actually on, and he didn't tell me, but he took me to places that we've been together, because we didn't even need to go there. We were actually headed to the West Coast. We were trying to work out some kind of deal. I won't get into it, but he stopped by places along the way and he was trying to jog my memory, and I didn't know it. I didn't know what he was doing until about 9 years later, and I realize now what he was doing because I'm starting to have maybe like bits of memory come back, but I actually had to sit down and take inventory of my life, right? And this is not easy. I don't know how often people do this. I don't know if this is like me or whatever, but I literally was like, okay, I graduated high school. You know, it was this month of the year. What did I do that month? Where was I a couple months from there? You know what I mean? I'm literally walking through, and I was just in a room by myself. I actually had like a notepad out, and I'm trying to take notes. So I was here then, I went there, and then what did I do, right? And I realized that when I began to take this very like detailed inventory of my life, I realized how full of holes it was, right? And that...
You think you were abducted?
No. Well, you could say abducted, like...
I'm talking like...
alien stuff? Well, so the whole alien thing is another thing, like... You
think you were in some kind of program?
I know I was in a program. Okay, so I'll just tell you what they ate my memories, right? They took my memories, right? And they're really good at it. Like they're really good at like pinpointing. I don't know how the hell they do it. I have had communication with people in the occult side of stuff, and they have told me that they do it. It's a demonic thing.
Sure. And
so, like demons are basically holding these files, right? And they're like the gatekeepers to memories, and I think maybe there's some truth in that, but I also, because of what I've seen, I just think that they have the technology to do this shit. Like, you know what I mean?
Zapped it away.
Like I mean, I don't know if it's as easy as like a what you see on like Men in Black type of thing, you know. But I do believe that we are at a point now where they like have the ability to literally just take your memories, and I say that because a good friend of mine, they did the same thing to him, but he still recalls memories, but he's broken. Like he when this comes over him, you know, it's like it's almost like he's a vegetable. You know, so maybe that is demonic. I don't know. You know, that does sound demonic, but So I have a lot of gaps in my memory. I've had people that recognize me in different places, and they're like, "What's?" And I don't have a clue, like, who they are. Like, I've had people tell me stories of things that, you know, we've done, and it's gone. You know what I mean? And so,
You think they used you for something?
totally, 100%. Like, I have.
Like drug deals kind of things? Or
Yeah, well, so I have a memory, yeah, we were on a C-130, we were armed, we were transporting pallets, and the pallets, there was a bunch of money and drugs, yep, I have memories of those, I have memories of killing people, and I don't know, like, I remember, like, I remember the smells, I remember everything, I remember the scene, I remember what happened, but I don't remember, like, how I got there, and I don't remember how I left. You know what I mean? It's just like these, and but at the same time, you know, it's real, but it's like, wait, how did I? And there's no context for it. And I've woken up in certain, you know, stages of my life with injuries. So I don't profess to know how all that works. I don't know how they did it. I do know that it's you know, it gets to the point where, like, things are, you know, you can be, okay, so usually if you're going on an operation, right, and we're going to set up an operation somewhere, say Venezuela or say something, you know, typically before, you know, you'd send your, you know, your people in, they would already have all the locals there, they would run up in their asses, they would know everything, they would have files on everyone there, they would know everything, you would set up this whole scenario, you know, whatever scenarios you're going to do, and like, and you could be setting up a plan A scenario or a plan B scenario, it doesn't matter, you could do all this work and then scratch it, it's all done, you know what I mean? But like, where was I going with this? So
This sounds all CIA stuff.
yeah, I mean, so the guys that I'm involved, you know, friends with and all that, they do have ties to that organization. And then once again, you know, I want to be really clear about this too. Is a lot of people hear about, you know, organizations like the CIA or like the NSA, and they hear, you know, there's a bunch of alphabet agencies out there. Not everyone in these places are bad people. They, you know what I mean? I think we're in a you know, thanks to Q and all this other stuff or whatever, and actually, yeah, I mean, we can get in a Q maybe later, but you know, they think that, oh, you're just dealing with, like, oh, they're Satanists and they're all, you know, but it's not true. There are people out there that are actually awesome people. They're literally, like, living and dying for an ideology that is like respectable, it's honorable, you know what I mean? And then there are others that are absolutely not, that are not, you know what I mean? So I think I think just people need to, like, you can't blanket statement stuff, you know what I mean? I still, like, the friends that I have, you know, they're not, they may not be actively involved. You're never, listen, if you're ever involved in this stuff, you're never getting out of it. You're never going to be, like, left alone. You know what I mean? You're never like, oh, he's all right, and let him live his life out somewhere, you know, like, so even in them, like, my friends, even though back in the day we did terrible shit, you know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like that's me, you know what I mean? It's not who I am. Like, now, I could never do, like, the stuff that, you know what I mean, that we did. It's just, it's you know, it's like, it's traumatizing when you think about, like, some of the stuff, you know. So I think that everything's not so cut and dry. I think people just want to make things, everything so just cut and dry. And I think that, you know, if you really listen to God, you know, I mean, I don't mean to say it like that, but if you're really like pouring through and like getting the meaning in the scriptures, you know, like there's a verse that comes out, you know, to my head, and it's like the wheat and the tares, right? And it's like, just kill them all, right? But God's like, dude, if you kill all the tares, you're gonna kill the wheat. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't work like that. Where everything is so intertwined, right? And relationally, and like heart, you know, just love and the way it all works, it's so intertwined that you can't just blanket statement. You can't just kill everything and it's all going to be good. You know what I mean? Because even the people that are the worst, that are God's biggest enemies and the enemies of humanity, right, may be one of his children. You know what I mean? They have yet to come to that meeting with God, you know? And I'm just thankful that I was pulled out of this shit, you know?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You're very fortunate. Not a lot of people made it.
No, but there's still good guys out there that are involved in really bad stuff, and so, and they don't have any recourse. There's no recourse. You have to toe the line. You got to keep going forward, you know. And so
they may not even. They may be using them like they used you, and they don't know what
they're using. Everybody. They're using even themselves, right?
Yeah.
They have no recourse. So you gotta like separate, you know. What is spiritual? What's physical? What's human? You know, because you know, some people are just lost and they just need a miracle. You know what I mean? And so I don't want to poke the bear. I don't want to I don't want to piss anybody off, but I do want to talk to maybe people that are listening to this that are involved in this and like let them know that like, dude, like, there's a way out. You know what I mean? And sometimes, like, you know, sometimes it's not easy, man. Sometimes, you know, it's gonna cost everything. But you can choose. You know what I mean? We can choose. You know, even though our the options, our choice options, are all rigged. You know, I always just settle on, like, God looks at your heart. You know what I mean? He's looking at your heart. He's looking at everything, every decision that you made. What were your intentions? We lie to ourselves, right? About like why we did what we did. But like, if you really get down to like why you're doing what you're doing, like, you know, like just putting it on a guy's perspective, you know, like, you're walking through a grocery store, you see a hot lady. Why'd you go down that aisle? You know what I mean? You didn't need anything in that, right? But the guy's like, oh, I just walked down the aisle. You know what I mean? Like, stupid stuff like that. Every decision that we make, right, has an ulterior, has something behind it. And we're making decisions like this all day long, and we're not even, like, most of the time aware of why, or you know what I mean, what our heart is doing. God sees it all, you know what I mean? And so, like, you can't hide. We hide from ourselves, even. We hide from everyone else, even better, you know. But like, you can't hide from God, you know. So once you start seeing that stuff, you just you know, you get into a place where it's like, dude, I can't lie. And that's another thing. You know, a lot of these guys are gonna tell you, man, we can't lie. We don't lie. You know what I mean? We'll take whatever you got. You want to give us bullets. You want to give us fire. You want to give us hell. Whatever. We'll take it all. You know what we're not going to take? We're not going to take the blame. You know what I mean? And that's it. They don't care. They don't care. You know. But like, you know, I think as you get older, and as you get closer to God, that's the very thing you start taking is the blame. Right? Is you start looking into shit and be like, I am to blame for this. You know what I mean? Like, wow, I did this because that was my intention. You know what I mean? Like, and you realize, yeah, dude, you're a dirtbag. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think once you come to grips with that, like, you have to come to terms with that. You know what I mean? You have to come to terms with, like, just how fallen and broken and how, like, and just really, you know, it's hard for guys to admit, like, just to say, like, I'm weak. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have maybe what it takes. You know what I mean? To come to those broken. And so I've been there a lot. And I, you know, I am, you know, I am that person. And so we all are, you know what I mean? That's kind of the beautiful thing, is that you don't need to be like singled out, you know what I mean? Like, we all are that person, you know, and until you have that, until you're in that place where you're like, I'm just done and I'm sorry and I'm, you know what I mean? That's all it is. That's all he wants, is that moldable spot where we're there, you know what I mean? Because we honestly don't know anything. Like, you know, people talk to me, like, people know that I've been involved with stuff, and they want to ask a bunch of questions and all this other stuff, but it's like the most important part is like having a heart that's contrite and moldable, and just understanding that even you could know everything in the world and you're still not going to know what the enemy has up his sleeve. You're still not going to know what God has up his sleeve, right? Like, unless it's revealed to you, right? But a lot of times we're willing participants on whatever side we choose, and you are never going to get the full picture. You know what I mean? So a lot of people just got to like get to a point where they're like, okay, like, dude, you will never have the full picture. You know what I mean? But that being said, we are moving into a time right now where I believe we are moving to the time of Daniel, where scrolls are being opened, and knowledge that is since, you know, that's for thousands of years it has been occulted. And like, when I say occulted, I don't mean like occult, like Satanism. I mean occulted, I mean like hidden from your eye, you know, hidden. Because darkness is increasing, and at the same time light is increasing, right? And so darkness pervades everything, you know, and even in the church, you know, you see these mega churches and all this, and like God is weeping over this stuff, you know what I mean? And but even in those places, his children are, you know what I mean? Like, we are literally mixed with the tares, and we are everywhere, you know what I mean? And so any of these blanket statements, any of this thing, like, we have to, you know, I think one of the things that I had to come to terms with was like, everyone's like, oh, so who do I listen to, and what do I, and who's the real pastor, and what, you know, what's real? And it's like, you know what, dude, God, I guess I had come to this point where it was like, God's like, my sheep hear my voice and they will hearken not to another, right? Like, we have like, it's like a commandment to know the voice of our Father, right? And so that's it. You know what I mean? Like, we're not supposed to listen to some dude behind a pulpit. You know, we're not supposed to like try to emulate some like high-powered worship leader. You know what I mean? Or, you know, like this is all idolatry in a sense. You know, it's like King Solomon said, it's all vain. It's vanity. You know what I mean? Everything. It's chasing after vanity. And so you can get to a point where like we have this knowledge like Solomon, and with that knowledge will come just like the most crushing depression, and, you know, like, so even in that point, you know, you got to just lean on God. You know what I mean? And I think that through that, the unknown factors, the factors of like, you know, things being taken from me, you know, another thing is like, when you realize that you've been a victim and you don't even know it, it can bring a lot of anger, and sadness, and like just like recklessness. You know what I mean? So, I will say, you know, like, I've done dumb shit, like, and I don't take this for granted, but I've been helped, even in the judicial system, you know, like, they've kept me out of jail, you know what I mean? Like, and is that because I'm supposed to do something nefarious in the future, or, you know what I mean? And it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? Like, because I am choosing, I have a choice, you know what I mean? So it's a very strange thing. Some of the people that I know that are still involved in, like, let's say the dark side of stuff, and when I say dark side, I don't mean they're eating kids, I don't mean any of that. What I do mean is that they are, let's just say they're in the middle, they're it's war, and because of what they've done or are doing, like, people are dying, and you know what I mean, like, and it's very sneaky, like, it's very, you know, and like, it's the dark side, but doesn't mean he's, you know, doesn't mean he's a Satanist, doesn't mean any of that stuff. It's a dark world when you start talking about like the meat grinder, right? Like the but even these people are, they don't lie to me, and they're looking out for my, you know, they're looking out for my best interest. They they love my kids, you know what I mean? They love my family. So nothing is easy as people want it to be. It's not like I'm going to identify these people and then, you know what I mean? And that's going to be it. It's not. It's just not like that. You know what I mean? And it really comes down to like nothing's ever going to be given to you. Nothing's ever going to be like revealed to you. God will reveal to you stuff, right? And he'll give you what you can handle, right?
In the appropriate time.
Yep, in the appropriate time. And we all have something to do, right? Because we, as all the people here on the planet Earth, listen, it says that all of creation groans for the revealing of the sons and daughters of God, right? Since the beginning, all of creation has been groaning, like weeping, travailing, in pain, waiting. When is this going to end? Like the blood of Abel is still crying out. You know what I mean? To this day, like, and so, there's no one that wants to see this come to fruition more than him, you know. And so, you, me, anyone alive here on this earth could have been interjected into the timeline anywhere, you know what I mean? 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, anywhere, but we were interjected. We are put here in this time, in this day. We are fashioned in our mom's womb for this exact period, right? And so everyone, all eyes are on this right now because we are, I mean, I know it sounds super lame and I hate yeah, the time and place such as this, all right, and like what I can say, and I think this may help some people, is that what I've come to know and realize is that a lot of people in high ranking, officers above, DOD, intelligence agencies, not everyone in these apparatuses, right? But a lot of the highest ranking people are very well aware of spiritual truth. They are very well aware of corporeal entities. They are actually they speak to these. So there's a group called the what was it called? It's a maybe I'm not supposed to say anything about that. Yeah, we'll skip that. I don't want to say, but they are very well aware that they are non-corporeal entities, meaning that they don't even necessarily have a body. They're very well aware of, like, let's just say, the angelic. There are names of demonic entities. One of them, and I'll just say, like, so there was a high up. Say he's kind of in the intelligence, hearts and minds kind of apparatus, but they actually, I had an incident one day with a, for all intents and purposes, he seemed like a homeless guy, but the homeless guy came up and began saying some very pointed, like, knew who I was. I was in my vehicle with my friend's a special forces operator. Knew about him. My buddy was my army buddy was like, what? He was like, what the hell? Because he's very nuts and bolts. You know what I mean? They go in. It's like it's not a whole lot of ethereal stuff going on there. But when this homeless guy comes up, didn't ask for money, and just begins telling us about ourselves and like all this other stuff. I won't go into everything he said, but it was a little disturbing. So later on, I went back and I talked to my one of my dark side buddies about that, and he's like, oh yeah, he's like he calls them Bezel bums, right? And so what it is they are literally like human people that are it's almost just like the Matrix, right? You could be talking to someone, they could be an agent, right? They're Beelzebums, and they're like crows or like birds. They have their eyes everywhere. So Beelzebul, he has different names, whatever. he's actually over a lot of the intelligence apparatus, right? So there's a demonic, and that's real, and this is like well known. These people know this stuff, right? And so a lot of times I think Christianity as a whole believes that the devil cast 1/3 of the like angelic, and that's not really what the Bible says. Not really at all. And if you really get into it, a lot of what we're dealing with, yes, fallen angelic, there was that element of fallen angelic beings that I guess intermingled themselves with mankind. And this is what we're talking about when we talk about the seed of the serpent as opposed to the seed of the men. So the Ethiopians, I worked with the Ethiopians for a while. I worked with the Prince of Ethiopia. He's actually Emperor, I was going to say Mobutu. That was something else. That was Africa. That was blood diamond stuff. But it was not Haile Selassie, Emperor Johannes. So his great-grandson, I worked for them. And they also are very aware of not only like these guys are aware, like they can quote the Book of Enoch, and these different entities. So this stuff is super real, you know what I mean? Like, and I think a lot of people within the military apparatus that aren't in those higher echelons would just say this is crazy. It's crazy. A lot of people in the military are like, the military, they can't keep a secret. Like, it's the most dysfunctional operation, you know what I mean? But it is really not, you know what I mean? In reality, it is not. It doesn't make sense on the micro where people are seeing it, but as a larger system, we are talking about the most calculated, beyond digital force that is being assembled right now, like since the Tower of Babylon. That's literally what we're looking at. What is the Tower of Babylon? The Tower of Babylon was an initiative to attack heaven and overthrow the throne. That's literally what it was. There was nothing more to that initiative than to storm the gates of heaven and take it over. And so,
and they thought they could do it.
And God said they could do it. God literally said when they put themselves together like this, there's nothing they can't accomplish, and He had to come and He had to squash that out, right? Not that they were ever going to be able to overthrow heaven, but what they were looking at was almost like a viable goal, And so the reality of a lot of this stuff has to, it's hard. I recommend, right? Anyone that's hearing this, look into this stuff. I'm not really, I know I'm being really vague, but I would encourage somebody to look into etymology and look into the words. Etymology is basically like words, and so I'll just give you a quick rundown. Okay, let's start here. We have the constellation. We have Arcturus. We have the Polaris, and we have the Orion. These are known as like northern constellations. Arcturus is the bear. Bears are known as the guardians to the north. Arcturus in the north. It's where we get the word Arctic, right? We have the polar bears. Those things will track you for miles and kill you, right? So like those are like the guardians to the north. Orion was known as the north. It's where the waters for the earth come. They flow forth, right? They used to call it the navel of the earth. So that's coincidentally where the waters flow forth from this navel of the earth in the north. It's where we get the word navy. It's where we get the navel in our belly. So navy denoting water. Urine, where we get urine comes, and that's from Orion. That's a derivative of Orion, right? So even like the real Mediterranean, is Media, the land of Media. So a lot of these lands that we're talking about within the Bible itself they're telling you almost where they are, right? So a lot of these lands are in the north. I'm just gonna say it, they're in the north. And Mediterranean media, it is Eretz. Eretz is a derivative. That's where we get the word earth. Eretz is actually, I believe it's an ancient Hebrew word. Mediterranean, it literally means middle earth anus, right? Where the water's coming forth. The Red Sea and all that was known as it's red, or the Reed Sea, and they called it the Erythraean Sea. We don't even hear that anymore. Erythraean. So where we get the word like urethra, where once again it's denoting water, right, coming forth, right? So literally, like when you begin to look through your etymology, you can see what's happening. I know that others have done some studies into this as far as like pulling apart some etymology and finding like even like in our verbiage, like when you're writing your spelling, it's a spell. Like when you have your you learn all this spelling, these techniques, you have your grammar, which comes from an ancient word grimoire, which was an actual magical book, right? And so you cursive, you know what I mean? You're cursing, right? So you can keep going back with all this etymology as you start picking stuff apart, especially when you start getting the names and locations and stuff like that. Start looking at the Bible. Use parallels. I would use multiple translations if possible. Dig into it, but begin looking at the Bible and using it as like a compass, and begin looking like, okay, so if you're in Hebron and this is north of, and take notes. So this is north of Hebron, and like you can literally start finding out that like where we believe things are today, they are not. Everything's renamed. It's all been renamed, like New Hampshire, New York. You know what I mean? It's not. It's all been renamed. Our history has been scoured, and so that's one of the things that's happening now. We have different factions that are doing this. The dark side guy, there's a couple of them, but specifically the guy that I'm not really supposed to talk to, laid it out very clearly to me that there are factions out there that is what they do, is they're history erasers. They erase history, and they've been doing it for thousands of years. And
the purpose of that?
Well, to keep you, you have no point of reference. You know what I mean? Like literally, and so they erase history, and so it goes back to what we call the culture crew, right? So a lot of cities, a lot of people, the cult of personality, all that stuff, the culture crew. Okay, we'll just talk. I'll just bring it right down. We got in a lot of major American cities, we have what's known as fire spinners. You'll have these people that they spin fire, and they'll have these different parties. A lot of those fire spinners are part of the culture crew. They make music. They have they'll have block parties. They're the ones they're creating a culture, right? Almost out of nothing. And so if you start looking around the world, some of these places, they have no real history. When you start looking back into it, it's like, what? Like the culture that we see now and enjoy and think that this is what it is, it's no more than a few hundred years old. You know what I mean? That it's been created, etch-a-sketch. It's like, just to keep bringing it back. I don't mean to be like lame or whatever, but to keep bringing it back to movies like The Matrix, and when Neo goes down there and they think that they have this secret city of Zion and all this, and these are this is once again, they're kind of telling you, and he meets the architect, and the architect's like, nah, dude, you're the fifth incarnation of this, this thing. We've destroyed Zion 100 times, you know what I mean, or whatever, how many times. It's like that. You have no real history, so you don't really know what's going on. And so if you look at a lot of what's going on in the world today, you're going to hear from a lot of past whistleblowers at different places. They're going to tell you that they're trying to create biblical prophecy. They're trying to make it real, right? And that just goes back with lying about where the Holy Land is. You know what I mean? Look at what they say Mount Zion is. It's not even a mountain. It's literally, it's like this little hill. It's not real. Like, they're like, oh, here's another one. Check this out. The Wailing Wall. Everyone goes up, nods their head, like whatever, like to listen to some hip hop song or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, what did Jesus say? Jesus said that not one stone of that temple would be left atop of one another. So how is it that we have a whole wall that's standing up there that's part of this temple? It's not. That's not the temple. Clearly, Jesus said it. Not one stone would be left on top of another. That is not the wall. That is not Jerusalem. That is not where Jesus was crucified. It's all a farce. Like, everything is a farce. Like, we are so in the middle of like sludge of bullshit. You know what I mean? But it's crystal clear. What do I mean by that? I mean, like, if you're going spearfishing and you're not used to spearfishing and you see a fish in the water and you're like, oh, I'm gonna get him. You try to hit that fish where you think it's going to be, well, that spear is going to refract as soon as it hits the water, and you're going to be like 6 inches off, right? So that's it. Like, you can see the truth. It's right there. All the prophecy, everything's leading up, but it's like, you're off, dude. You know what I mean? Like, you're off just enough to where you're not hitting your mark, and that's all it takes. You know what I mean? So, like, literally, we are in millennia of deception, right? And so, like, you know how close you are with God, like, right? You're like, no one can take that away from you. God's gotten you through the hardest times in your life. You know, so imagine something that's so deceptive that it would steal that from you, right? That you would be like, oh, and they would lead you away from God. Well, I know it sounds impossible. However, it was even written in the Bible. It's like, even in the end times, right? That he's going to cut the time short because even the elect would be led astray, right? So that's the mind-numbing, overwhelming situation of deception that we are currently in right now, right? And like, when Jesus was here, the Gregorian calendar to me is not accurate at all. I don't believe in it at all. I don't think Jesus was here. I don't think he was here 2,000 years ago. I think it was much closer, right? I don't think it was that long, but even when he was here, he said that the spirit of Antichrist, the spirit of deceptions, was already like fully working in the earth, right? Take it. You gonna take it?
It's just my husband. He's like, he just got done work. It's interesting. I like all that stuff about the etymology, all that stuff. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool. It's interesting. It's even Gary Wing talked about that. You know, about certain things, and it may mean what you think it means in this language, but if you look deeper in another language, it doesn't mean that. It means something. I forget what he said, what Babel meant. It doesn't mean the Tower of Babel, what we think it means something. Oh, like the confusion of language. He said it meant something else, and I can't remember what it is now. I don't remember. I have to go back and listen.
Yeah, but
so,
I mean, it's true that, like, language, we're like, so one of the things my mom was kind of impressing on me was like so we're like physical, and some of these entities, like, they operate like it's like energy, right? So they're able to like transmute, right, through like even electricity and stuff. I've heard that they can use, but sigils, words, the words you speak, sin, when you see things that are against God and it comes through your eyes or even in your ears, they can find inroads on that stuff. So like, it's not even just through like sounds, words, stuff like that, but it's visually, and it can be energetically, and so it's very sneaky, because we're like in this three-dimensional construct, and that's why they say they're spirits and principalities of the air, right? So there's they're legit, like they want to exist here in any which way they can, right? So like and one of the biggest things that I think Christians and stuff get wrong is that they think that these things are like fallen angelic entities, and they're not. These things are like a lot of these things are idiots. You know what I mean? They literally, like, it's a murderous thing, and it just wants to murder, right? Or it's some perverted thing, and it doesn't have a body, right? So it's got to play its murderous or weird perversions out through a body, right, to appease itself. So like, and that's literally what we're talking about. We're not talking about, in a lot of instances, like some super smart thing. That's when they go get the strong man, right? These things can't do it, so they're going to get a strong man. Strong man will come, whatever. And these different levels of entities. And so a lot of these things, it's like anything, man. Like the angelic, fallen angelic seed that was planted on the earth through the daughters of men. As those lineages transcended through time and began intermixing, and these things did not just intermix with humans. They were like, it says they were sentient birds, reptiles, like fish of the sea, everything. They were literally trying to destroy everything that God made, right? And so you have this thing that's part part freaking, let's just make stuff, part lion, part angelic, and part angelic and part man. So you have this mixture of something, and then when it dies, it's not a spiritual entity fully, and it's not a earthbound thing fully. It's an abomination, right? So it's disembodied, it has no body. It's roaming around in the earth, and it's seeking victims, right? It's seeking anything energetically that it can, like, and so there are rules to it, right? They have to. There's rules, and and it's not. I mean, it is kind of like rules, but it's like just the way that things work, right? There has to be certain things that happen, but then on the other side of that, there's also just attack, and some people are like straight victims. You know what I mean? Like. So it's not, everything's not so easy, but these people think that because, they're telling you what they're doing, that your blood's off their hand. That's nuts. It's not true. Like, these people are screwed, and they know it in their soul very well. You know what I mean? Like, the further they're going into this, like, but, where was I going with that? So I think the biggest thing that, I think people need to recognize is that, like, the enemy is, you can't fight the enemy on your own, right? Yeah. But a lot of the things that are happening, we're not looking at this really narrow picture of just like these are demons or fallen angels. They're not, you know what I mean? There are literally angels here to help, right? Do we pray to them? No. And I'm actually on the fence as to whether we should even acknowledge them or talk to them or not.
They said not to bow down and worship them.
No, do not bow down nor worship them. Exactly. I'm not, and that's and any angel or anything that would, and that's another thing, right? Is that if we are people that are not supposed to have interactions with the spiritual, then why would we be told in the scriptures to test the spirits, right? So. A lot of people don't have these sort of like experiences. Like for a lot of people, I think they go to church, they hear about spiritual, and it's always like woo woo, out there. But then there are people that experience this very, very, very real. It's like so. I don't think that the people that don't experience spiritual things are like lost. I think that there's a different receptivity, right? Just because of like how far that we've come through this like lineages of just sin, and we're dulled down as like an overall species. Like the planet Earth it's not evolving, it's dying, right? We have less things alive here, everything like flora, fauna, everything. Like back then it was much more alive, right? And there's different, I believe it's the book of, maybe it was Esdras, right? And so some of these, and I ask yourself, why do we only have these 60 books? You know what I mean? Like who made that decision? These are like Council of Nicaea, you know what I mean? So like even within the Bible is talking about the book of Jasher. The Bible's quoting the book of Enoch. You know what I mean? So we need to get off this. Most people are going to church on Sunday thinking that's the Sabbath, and it's like, dude, you know what I mean? Like it just comes to a point where you have to tear everything down and start all over again, and like wonder at like, what do I know? Why do I know it? Follow it back like I did with my life. I had to literally take inventory of my whole life, right? And be like, where was I? Bam, bam. I literally wanted this inventory because I had to know, and I had never done this before. And it was then that I realized that there's some problems. You know what I mean? Like, so I think when, you know, it's a very healthy thing to go back to look at scripture and to relearn like the stuff that we learned, you know, in church and all this stuff, and like relearn it. Because it's sneaky, because there's some things that we just have and we just automatically believe them, and we don't even really know why. It's just an automatic, you know, an automatic thing. So I think that's been a big challenge, and like that would be, if I was to like pose a challenge, I would pose that. I would say, go back to your life. You know what I mean? Take inventory of your life. Take inventory, especially of the Word of God. Why do you believe what you believe? And does it say that in there? You know what I mean? And how? Because there's so many farces. There's so many things that people just listened and they heard, and like it's Sunday school or whatever, and it's one of the reasons that Christianity is in the state that it is. You know what I mean? Like, and it's one of the other reasons why the rest of the world looks at Christians and thinks they're just a bunch of hypocrites. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, so. You know, and that's the other thing too, is that, you know, the word, where was this written? Man, I wish I was like Gary Wayne. But you know, it says in the end times that people would hold on to a form of godliness, yet deny the power thereof. That there would be lovers of self, lovers of money, lovers of greed. You know what I mean? Like, and so, you know, I would just encourage everyone to look at you know, maybe who they're listening to, maybe look at what they're reading, and be willing to be like, just like, God, like, if I don't have it right, show me. You know what I mean? And then be willing to step up. Because I remember too when I came to God and I had this like epiphany, and I was like, dude, I just wanted to get out of my life. I had to pay lawyers. I had all these, you know, bills. I had all this stuff, and I'm like, and I didn't even know, like, I didn't even have a job. Like, I've never worked a job. Like, I'm like, what do I do? Like, I see my friends, and they're like, oh, I just graduated, you know, and I'm from college, and I'm like, you know, I'm an accountant, and oh, you know, I'm doing this, and I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, I've been selling drugs and guns, you know what I mean? Like, what? So I'm like, now I'm on trying to get a job, and I'm like, what the, you know? And it's like, it's kind of like that. I'm trying to make a point, and I always lose myself in it. Oh gosh, damn it! I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I don't know. I don't remember where I was going with that, but I had a purpose. I'll probably remember it in like 5 minutes.
Did you?
Gosh. But yeah, so I think that, and even in myself, I think that anything that we just hold on to is like, you know, I know this. I'm not going to look into that because I already know. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like we need to like hear God's voice and be able to, because I feel like at this point in life, I feel like he is calling people to, like, it says where there is no vision, the people perish, right? And I feel like right now a lot of people have no vision. They have no vision of like, what am I doing? I see this stuff going on, like I am powerless. I try to find what's true, and it's like I said, what is truth? Truth is like anything. It's like truth is subjective now. You know what I mean? And so like, I feel like that we're moving into a time now where like God's literally saying like, hear my voice, like for you. You know what I mean? Like like personally, like churches or whatever, like, not like what's the script, like, do not forsake the gathering of the saints, type of thing. So pastors use that all the time, like, you better be here, and then in your tithe, your first fruits, you know what I mean. So people use these things like hooks, you know what I mean, because they're literally using their church as it's on the same business. It's a business model, you know what I mean. Like God's want to kick over all these. Say these churches were tables, kick them all over. You know what I mean? Like literally, like we're at that point, and so. I've always believed, and I don't know if it's scripture or not, but I've always believed that there's going to be like this just major like awakening, like I believe that we're gonna move into a time where, like, because the veil is thin, it's thinning, right? We're in a time right now, and so like the things that we would take and think are like science fiction and all that, like, back in the day, like, we're literally coming to where it's going to be like in our face, you know what I mean? I think that the clock is ticking down. I think that they're moving into a new, and you can see this with a lot of different topics of the day, like, even this whole like pedophilia thing, once you demystify it and you talk about it, and everyone's talking about it, and like they're having discussions, and it's like it no longer becomes this, it doesn't have the same gut-wrenching effect, you know what I mean, because you've sterilized, you've clinicized it, you know what I mean. And so like that's literally what's happening, you know what I mean. We're becoming desensitized to these things, and we're looking at that's the first step, right? And so we're literally looking at the steps to where, like Jesus said, the end times are going to be like the times of Noah. What were the times of Noah? They were giving in marriage, they were intermingling, the seed of the serpent, like, so we're moving back into that era. And like from what I have seen, what I know from my background, and from my from what I've done operationally and everything, is that the highest echelons of the power structures that are very aware of this, right?
Oh yeah.
Very aware.
They want it to happen.
Oh yeah. And
making it happen.
And even the people
faster.
that are. Yes, yeah. Everything's accelerated right now, right? And even God saying, like, He's going to accelerate. You know what I mean? He said, "I'm going to cut the shot. I'm going to cut the time." You know what I mean? Because if I didn't, you couldn't save anyone. It's kind of like having this beautiful terrarium, right? You can have some really hardy cactuses and flowers and stuff in there that's just, and everything else is going to die around it, but these things are going to like be hardy. But even given that, they're going to die, you know what I mean? So we're only human.
And that brings us to an end of another intriguing episode of the Sensible Hippie Podcast. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to my special guest, Josh, for joining us and sharing his fascinating journey. Josh's story is a reminder of how complex and mysterious life can be, and how the past can shape us in unexpected ways. I'm incredibly privileged that Josh chose to open up his life in this exclusive and personal discussion. His experiences navigating through the fog of forgotten memories and finding faith in the unknown have undoubtedly left us with much to ponder. We've journeyed down some deep rabbit holes today, and there's still so much more to explore. So Josh, we definitely need you to come back on the show to help us close some of these intriguing paths we have ventured down. To my listeners, thank you for tuning in. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star rating. And don't forget to subscribe for more thought-provoking conversations. Your support helps others like yourself find this podcast. So stay curious, keep questioning, and until the next time, take care. Bye.
I don't know where this life will take me. I just know I'm here for the ride. Baby, there ain't no sense in waiting. Yeah, we don't know if we got the time. Oh, I'm just a country girl in a real big world. You can catch me on 65, driving to the mountaintop. I don't make no stops. Yeah, this town was once all that I knew. I'll never forget my roots. I'll never forget my roots. Maybe I'll end up in the city, underneath all the flashing lights. Maybe I'll be in a new country, but when I go to sleep at night, oh, I'm just a country girl in a real big world. You can catch me on 65, driving to the mountaintop. I don't make no stops. Yeah, this town was once all that I knew. I'll never forget my roots. 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 There's nothing you can make me do to ever forget my roots. Oh, I'm just a country girl in a real big world. You can catch me on 65, driving to the mountaintop. I don't make no stops. Yeah, this town was once all that I knew. I'll never forget my roots. I'll never forget my roots.